Hi, everyone. Here with Denis Pombriant, who's the CEO of Beagle Research. Very fortunate to have him here today. Denis is a frequent speaker at conferences, written a couple books, working on one right now. So happy to see you again.
Hi, Ken. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Denis, first question. So just to level set for everyone, this interview is going to be talking about customer intelligence 2.0. So what does that next generation of customer intelligence look like? What do we need to be thinking about? So first question for you, Denis. This whole democratization of information has empowered buyers who are more sophisticated and knowledgeable than ever before. And so it's really shifted the power from the vendors to the buyers. And so in this new dynamic, how are the vendors and the buyers reacting to this? How are they adapting to this new world?
Oh, good question. Some are doing better than others. I think when we talk about the democratization of information, what we're really talking about is information has become free on the internet, and vendors don't any longer control the flow of information in the sales process. And you've heard, and I've heard, and probably everybody in the audience has heard, that customers perform something like 50 or 60% of the sales process without the sales rep, without access to a company. So some researchers are referring to this as the conversion from a sales process to a customer buying process. And that's been incredibly liberating and empowering for customers. That doesn't always mean that customers know what they're buying or know why they're buying it. It's also giving vendors some trouble in understanding customer motivations and needs and, gee, what product should I build next? So it's really a mixed bag. I think the good news is that vendors have the ability today through things like social media and other technologies to capture a great deal of customer data and to use analytics to figure out what it means and identify the nuggets in it that will enable them to develop knowledge and ultimately make better decisions about how to deal with customers. So it's all of that.
That's interesting. So you brought up the point around the interactions with the buyers is shifting away from sales to obviously marketing, digital sources, et cetera. So with that and in this, this whole new world, the proliferation of touch points with buyers has created a whole new dynamic. So how can companies, what are some of the best practices that you see as far as leveraging customer insight in a multi-channel world and delivering the right message to the right person at the right time in this fast-paced, real-time environment?
In the good old days, we used to say ready, fire, aim. And what we meant by that was we'd develop programs and go out to market and we wouldn't necessarily know what was good or not. We'd let the market tell us. And I think the best practice has shifted 180 degrees now. The best practice really, from what I can see, is when companies start with the end in mind. They ask themselves, what is it that I want to have happen in this relationship? And then work backwards to identify the information that they might need that drives the knowledge to make good decisions about how to treat a customer. But if you're going to do that, then you need to also understand what data you need to capture to run through analytics to give you information that drives knowledge and on and on. So it's a multi-step kind of thing. And I think some of the best practices are happening when vendors say, whoa, horsey, let's think about this. And a couple of other ideas. In some organizations that I've seen, some very large organizations, some very small organizations, the vendors are defining something called a moment of truth. What is the customer moment of truth? We can't be great at everything we do with our customers. So what are the 1, 2, 3, or whatever number of things that we want to do that we have to be great at? And once we can identify those things, then we can build best practices around those.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually kind of interesting. So you talked about becoming more prescriptive, right? And what's actually kind of interesting, so Gartner had a study that came out earlier this year, and they talked about the 3 top objectives for customer intelligence. So one is improving the customer experience. Number 2 is acquiring new customers. And number 3 is driving sales growth. Yet, we're in this dynamic where marketing organizations and sales organizations aren't living up to their potential. And what I mean by that is, so Fournier's group had a study of CEOs, and these CEOs said, actually 73% of CEOs said that the marketing teams aren't living up to their efforts as far as driving revenue growth. They're not holding their end of the bargain. And then on the sales side, 87% of executive buyers say that sales reps cannot clearly articulate their business problems and present a solution to solve them. So you have this pressure, like you're talking about, in adapting to this new world, yet marketing and sales is struggling. Why? What are some of the issues you're seeing?
Whoa, let's unpack this. This is actually several questions. And I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the question because, I'm a big fan of in-memory databases, but I don't have one. So the first thing about Gartner, I agree with it. What it really boils down to is CEOs have to find ways, and this is a perennial problem, they have to find ways to drive revenue. And these days, driving revenue might mean improving the customer experience if we can define what a customer experience is and then figure out how to improve it.
Sure.
Certainly cross-selling and upselling, that's selling within your customer base, that's deriving more revenue there, and driving more revenue from new businesses. That's going to be really hard, I think, because in market after market that I'm seeing, the markets are less new greenfield and more replacement. And replacement is a fraction of what the new greenfield opportunity was. So you see the graphs, the growth graphs kind of falling over, and it's becoming a zero-sum situation where if I'm going to actually get new business, I'm probably going to steal it from you in a lot of mature markets. So there's all that going on as well. Now, refresh me about the CEO and the CMO.
So you articulated the challenges on the marketing side.
Right.
Now on the sales side, so where are you seeing the sales team struggling in this environment?
Oh well, there's more on the marketing side I feel kind of good and bad for CMOs these days. If there's one job title whose job definition is changing at a more rapid rate, I don't know what it is. The CMO of today probably started his or her career as a brochure and content generator and a lead generator, buying display ads in magazines, for example. And what's really tough about that is nobody really understands the marketer. The C-suite is full of people like the CFO who wants to know about revenue and how to spend it, the CEO who wants to know about revenue and what to tell the board, the CSO who's responsible for driving revenue. The CMO comes in with information about trade shows and impressions and colors, and none of that makes a great deal of sense to the rest of these guys. Now, the good news, I think, is that over the last few years, the CMO has finally gotten to the point where the CMO is talking the language of the rest of the C-suite. So, and in no small measure because of big data, because of analytics, because the CMO is finally able to come in and say, program A generated X leads, but it costs us Y dollars compared to program B that costs us less money and generated almost as many leads. I know what I'm going to do next time. And the rest of the C-level suite says, oh yeah, we get it. Yeah, you should spend less on marketing and get more value for the dollar. Right. We get that. Okay. So all of that's happening in marketing too. I've got some pictures that I'm going to show.
I was going to ask you that. So my next question to you was that, from what I understand, you just came out with a marketing study or study of sales and marketing and how they're using data and analytics and the challenges they're facing. So you want to go to that?
Wow, big picture. Okay, so there's really one thing that I want to talk about with this slide. This is from some research we did over the summer. And one of the really powerful, impactful, interesting things that I discovered from this, I know it's hard to read, but if you take the right-hand side of the, I can look at the monitor. Hey, this is cool. So, if you look at the right-hand side of the donut, Bray Wang will now demonstrate, like Vanna White. Right, the right-hand side of the donut really talks about some very traditional kinds of things. Can I get up? Just walk around. Some very traditional kinds of things that we do with data. So for example, the blue bar at the top around 1 o'clock is the number of leads produced. The red one is the number of opportunities. Revenue from marketing programs is the green piece. All those things are really nice, but you know what? They're all backward looking. They're all retrospective. When we talk about big data, you know, we think we've got all this mountain of data and we don't know what to do with, and boy, you know, we need to slice through it. And all that's true, but you know what? We're still not capturing enough data. If you take a look at the 7 o'clock position, I think that's where we asked about whether or not companies are time-stamping events in their marketing funnel. And almost nobody is, which is mind-blowing because, you know, when you think about how hard some data is to get, time-stamping an event in your marketing funnel is about the easiest thing you can do because you don't have to ask anybody for it. You can just programmatically bring it in to your system. And what you get once you start time-stamping is things like, well, if you can do arithmetic, you know the start of a phase and the end of a phase, and you can develop metrics based on that. You can say, well, it takes 30 days for a lead to mature, or it takes 10 days to get through this step. Now, what happens if a lead gets through a step in 5 days? Is that a good sign? Is that a buy signal? Perhaps. Mm-hmm. But what's striking to me is that in this survey, at least, what we're identifying is that people are using this modern analytic technology to drive old-fashioned reports. Okay?
Okay.
So, what do we got here?
Now, what about from the revenue performance? So this is really more the sales side, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of things are happening in sales. You know, I think if you look at in CRM, sales, marketing, and customer service, marketing and customer service are the ones that are adopting analytics and big data the most. Sales seems to be the laggard in this here. I got to go look at the monitor.
Sure.
I forgot what it said there. So if you look at what's in the circle, campaign influence on revenue, and just before that, marketing qualified leads. Okay, what we're seeing in the data. Oh, I can look here too. Isn't that nice? What we're seeing here is that companies are doing an okay job of identifying what programs work best, but they could probably do a better job of it if they were doing more cross-tabulating. One of the things we discovered in the survey is that a lot of companies say they're cross-tabulating, but they're cross-tabulating on a limited set of data. Mm-hmm. For example, if you're not, again, capturing timestamps on your activities, it becomes increasingly difficult to do cross tabs and get meaningful information out, like the efficacy of one program versus another. One program might give me results in 45 days, but another program might give me results in 90 days.
Right.
Okay.
Very interesting.
So
then that gets into this next slide here. So talk to us about this.
Yeah.
As far as weighting campaigns.
Yes. What I thought was interesting about the information that we collected here is that a significant portion of the respondents told us that they either don't weight programs at all, or they weight all programs the same. So if a customer gets touched by, say, 4 marketing programs, and you weight all of them the same, you give each of them credit, then at the end of the day, you don't know which program is best for soliciting or eliciting leads. On the other hand, a roughly equal number of respondents said they weight the first program that surfaces the lead, and an equal number said they weight most heavily the last program that brings the lead in. And if you think about it, if you take a look at what your sales process is, if your sales process is a short one, the most difficult thing you probably have to do is generate the lead at all. And so waiting the first program makes a great deal of sense. If your sales process is long and you have to invest significantly in resources and people and time, then you want to make sure that the lead is well qualified, and the last program that tips the lead into marketing qualified category probably makes sense for your business to be the one that you weight most heavily.
Well, it's actually interesting because I know this just from running campaigns myself. I mean, so it can get complicated very quickly when you're trying to assign weighting and depending on who the buyer is and what kind of solution you're trying to sell. And then you look, okay, what's the impact of particular pieces of the channel? So was it, okay, this marketing automation or marketing nurture campaign that drove it, or social, or a digital or sales rep, or a combination, obviously, thereof. So it can get pretty complicated, I'm sure.
It can, and you need to be able to tease that apart if you're going to adequately allocate your budget in the next quarter or the next year.
But it sounds like the best practice is you got to do it, though. You got to take the time to do the rigor around that.
You do, and one of the things that organizations are starting to do more and more of is to analyze their own data, not necessarily the data that they collect from the marketplace, but analyze what happened in their processes, which enables them to understand which marketing programs or what types of marketing programs are the best. And let's do a hypothetical. Suppose you've got a forecast. You're in the middle of the quarter. You've got a forecast that says, we're not going to make quota. Oops. So what kind of marketing program do you want to run? Do you want to run a marketing program that takes 90 days to bring in results, or do you want to run one that takes 30 or 45 days? We know the answer to that. But if you don't know which program does best under which conditions, you're at a disadvantage.
Right.
And then I promise you the CSO will be talking to you and you won't like what they say.
Right. Interesting. So do you want to share other aspects of the research, or I have some other questions for you?
No, let's keep going with your questions.
So then, we're talking about running campaigns and integrating across channels. So, so when you think it from a system perspective, what are some of the things companies should be thinking about as far as, utilizing the data analytics across these different systems?
Well, one of the first things I'd recommend is ask yourself if you really need all the channels. That sounds a little heretical, perhaps, but not every business needs a Facebook page. Not every business needs a Twitter channel. Lots of them do. In my own experience, I have a blog, and the only time I really use Twitter is when I post a blog. The blog automatically alerts the Twitterverse and Facebook and LinkedIn. Because most of what I do can't be done in 140 characters. It's great to have somebody say, hey, go check this out.
Right.
So one of the early things you should do is ask yourself, what are the channels I really need? And to do that, you probably have to ask yourself, what are the demographics that I'm going after? Am I going after digital natives? Well, if I am, then a lot of them are Twitter and Facebook users, and that makes a great deal of sense. If I'm going after an older demographic, maybe not so much. Maybe they're still using email. Maybe if I'm selling a product or a product set that's adequate and low price, and my moment of truth with my customer is providing a low price, adequate product, that might tell me that I'm dealing with a younger demographic, and I therefore might want to use more social media. On the other hand, if I'm selling an insanely great product, as Steve Jobs might have said, at a high price, my customers are going to expect some real live hand-holding from a real person.
Right.
And as a consequence, if I put a social channel between me and them, maybe, not necessarily, they won't like that. So there's an amount of testing and iteration that needs to go on, but also an amount of awareness of the demographic and the market and the product set and the offering and the messaging and who knows, all that stuff.
Okay. So you're working with executives and clients around the country, around the world. So who do you see doing some of these things well? You don't have to name names per se, but or at least some of the things that they're doing that is really standing out to you.
In the research I'm doing for my book, I'm talking to a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and it's really refreshing to see how many are adopting social, And not just social media or social technology, but actually social mindsets. It really starts with putting the customer in the center of the discussion, understanding that the customer isn't going to come to you until they're ready, that they're going to go off and do their own research. They're going to get 60% of the way through the buy cycle or the sales cycle, whatever you want to call it. So I'll give you one really very specific thing that I see that's working very well. It's called inbound marketing. And it was pioneered by at least one company in Boston, HubSpot, and several other companies are doing the same kind of thing. And what they're trying to do, what they're advocating, is providing thought leadership, information, good ideas out on the web, easily searchable, easily risable, and letting customers absorb that. And when they're ready to make a purchase for something that you offer, they'll see you as a thought leader and they'll come to you right away. And I saw a really great case example of this with a guy in the middle Atlantic states who sold swimming pools, in-ground swimming pools. And he started doing a blog and doing all the search engine optimization for it that you should do. And he had a Twitter channel, he had a Facebook channel, he did everything right. And he just started pumping out information about swimming pools and things that could go wrong and how to fix them and things to do right. The guy is a millionaire many times over in just a few years because people went to search engines, they looked up their problem, and there was the solution with his name on it. And so when they said, gee, I need to get this fixed, or I need a new pool, or whatever, they came to him.
So he was the pool guy, social handle or something? I don't know.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
All right, interesting. All right, last question. So, if you look at security, privacy, and you talk about customer intelligence, obviously very, very hot topics and increasing concerns, for regulators around the world. So, from what I understand, you were just in German law review. So, can you share about, when they interviewed you, what you talked about these issues?
Well, it was actually an article that I wrote.
Okay.
For computer law review international. That's what it is. I had to translate it.
All right.
It's available in English. What CRI asked for was a working definition of the difference between data, information, and knowledge, because a lot of lawyers aren't necessarily up on that. And they're trying to influence the discussion in Europe about data privacy, data security, and I gave them my 5,000 cents worth. And a couple of the things that I took away from doing the research and the writing was, number one, law always lags technology. There's no sense in writing a law until you've got something to write the law about. So we're in an interesting transition time right now where we've got a lot of technology, we don't have a lot of law governing it, and it's kind of like a Wild West show,
right? Which
is neither good nor bad. But the big takeaway that I took from this was that when we look to secure our data, perhaps we should look to secure our information instead. The approaches that we've taken historically to secure data have amounted to building a moat or building a wall around the data. And anybody who's studied crime at all knows that when you build a tall wall, somebody builds a taller ladder to get in, to get over it. But there are technologies available today that enable us to do a much better job of encryption. And I know some companies are already encrypting what they've got. But doing more encryption, changing your encryption scheme on a frequent basis makes it harder for the bad guys to access your data and turn it into information, which is ultimately what they want and what you want. They don't nobody wants the data.
Right.
They want the information.
Yep. Makes sense. Well, thank you very much for your time. Any questions for Dennis from the audience?
It's my pleasure. Did I put anybody to sleep?
Excellent.
Is there anyone here I have not insulted?
All right. Excellent. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dennis. He'll be available for questions.
Thank you.